Ever since Marvel announced its expansion into the world of werewolves and full moons at this year's D23 Expo, the fans can't wait to see how it all ties into the MCU. A group of monster hunters on the hunt for a mysterious relic while battling it out with a monster like no other. Werewolf by Night is set to take Marvel fans headfirst into the horror genre. Stay tuned till the end for all of this and more. First up, what's the hype all about? With the release of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Marvel experimented with a different genre for the first time. Known as the MCU's very first horror movie, Doctor Strange centered around the Book of Sins, or the Darkhold as most of us know it. Now, we already know what this book of evil magic is capable of, but Werewolf by Night takes this craziness to a whole new level. The Werewolf by Night comics made their debut all the way back in 1971 with Marvel's Spotlight 2. Known as Jack Russell by day, the Werewolf Knight's origin story goes something like this. Russell is a direct descendant of Grigory Rusov, who was cursed to turn into a vampire after he got into a battle with the notorious Dracula. Taking inspiration from some of the most iconic characters in horror lore, Werewolf by Night starts off with Jack's grandfather activating the curse after he gets his hands on a copy of the Darkhold. And after that, every full moon, Gregor and all of his descendants turned into wild werewolves with supernatural abilities, like lightning fast speed and increased strength that can tackle even the deadliest of enemies and their weapons. Now, how Jack's powers are activated is a whole different story. And just so we don't give you any spoilers, we're not going to be opening that whole Pandora's box. Moving on to being a werewolf by night. We all know that the werewolf trope has been overdone to death in pop culture at this point. From Twilight to Teen Wolf and everything in between. We all know that werewolves are shapeshifters who turn into their beastly forms at the first sight of the full moon. So the question is, why has Marvel decided to join the party so late? And what is it about Werewolf by Night that's so different? The answer to that is our central character, Jack Russell. When the werewolf curse is first activated, we see Jack lose all sense of self and turn into an animal by night with not a single ounce of his human capabilities. However, what kept the readers hooked to the comics was how Jack managed to navigate his form shifting and gradually become more and more aware of what he was doing when he turned into his werewolf form. And as he gains more control over his supernatural abilities, Russell becomes stronger and faster, and all of his senses are heightened, giving him the strength he needs to battle anyone who tries to hunt him down. Up next, are we going to get the crossover of a lifetime? As Marvel gears up to enter the horror genre with a bang, the fans can't help but wonder if this is all setting us up for a crossover to remember for ages. With the launch of Disney Plus, the world saw an overload of Marvel content, and we're saying that's a good thing. With a new TV show releasing every other month, the MCU has expanded to a world beyond just the movies, and to be honest, we're all here for it. This expansion has given way to plenty of crossovers and timelines merging into one another, and one crossover that the fans have really been looking forward to is that of Moon Knight and Werewolf by Night. For those of you who don't know, Moon Knight is a TV show that revolves around a mercenary named Mark Spector, who finds himself involved in a weird mystery, and that also brings a bunch of Egyptian gods into the mix. So how would the story of Mark Spector tie into the world of Werewolf by Night? Well, if you go by the books, or the comics in this case, the first ever appearance that Mark made was in the Werewolf by Night comics. So considering that the two stories already have a shared history, combined with the fact that both the film and the TV show are part of Marvel's foray into the horror genre, a crossover only makes sense, right? However, Marvel Studios has given a pretty clear statement that while the two stories definitely have the potential to melt into each other at various points, the producers want to focus on giving the Werewolf by Night a moment of its own before throwing them in a whole new world. But that doesn't mean that the crossover isn't going to happen. In fact, rumor has it that Werewolf by Night is also going to be crossing paths with Marvel's Blade, Mahershala Ali, followed by the Rising of the Midnight Suns. A crossover with the Moon Knight isn't going to be the only thing that the development of Werewolf by Night can lead to. Marvel fanatics have all the reason to believe that the introduction of Jack Russell to the MCU is going to be followed by much greater things, setting us up for an entirely new phase of the cinematic universe, building up to the formation of the iconic Midnight Suns. The Midnight Suns made their first appearance in the comics in 1992, and the group is made up of a bunch of superheroes who band together to defeat Lilith, the mother of all demons after she is resurrected from the dead. Of course, fans who are familiar with the comics already know that the members of the Midnight Suns, including Doctor Strange, Morbius, Moon Knight, and Blade, who has already made his impressive debut in Marvel's Eternals. And with Werewolf by Night all set to make his appearance in the MCU, the character can be the connecting link between all of them, leading the fans to believe that Jack Russell might actually end up becoming part of the Midnight Suns himself, which will definitely be an interesting turn of events. Then we have Marvel Goes Supernatural. For the initial phases of the MCU, the producers and filmmakers decided to keep things strictly science fiction based. So every OG Marvel hero has a pretty clear scientific explanation behind their powers. However, with the introduction of Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch, Marvel opened up to the idea of supernatural beings and powers. Of course, this escalated with the introduction of characters like Doctor Strange, who ultimately brought the idea of the Darkhold to the MCU. For the latter phases, Marvel Studios played around with the idea of witches and wizards, spellcasting, alternate universe, and mind-erasing powers in not just Doctor Strange, but also films like Shang-Chi and the iconic Spider-Man No Way Home. As the franchise ties in more and more mythical creatures and legends into lore, progressing towards the horror genre in a very interesting and organic way, which is why fans are excited to see what else it is for us to uncover. Heading over to Marvel Goes Goth. The introduction of a werewolf in the MCU is definitely a first, so the first ever reveal of Werewolf by Night was a moment like no other. The trailer for the Halloween special takes all the inspirations from old-time classic horror flicks. Think Psycho by Alfred Hitchcock. But the thing is that Marvel has been playing the goth angle with its comics for years now, and that element is only now moving on to the big screen. So, not just in terms of its story, but also the aesthetics, this Halloween special is going to be quite a surprise for avid Marvel fans, who have probably never seen the studio move away from its signature look and feel. The trailer for Werewolf by Night will give you all the spooky feels with its black and white visuals, nostalgic horror movie music, old school title cards, dramatic sharp lighting, and of course, exaggerated jump scares and character design. In fact, if you were to watch the trailer with no context, you'd probably think that it belongs to the 70s horror era. And while it's definitely a big change for Marvel, it's definitely one that people are excited about. Lastly, the future of Werewolf by Night. While Werewolf by Night is all set to make its grand debut in the MCU, what you might not have seen coming is the fact that the character isn't actually getting his own film or show. What's happening is that Werewolf by Night is being released by Marvel as a Halloween special. And while that's definitely a first for the studio, it has left the fans wondering whether or not the werewolf actually has a future in the MCU, or whether his role is going to be reduced to a limited capacity. But then again, would Marvel really go through the trouble of drafting a script and putting together an entire special just to abandon the story they're creating? The chances of that happening are highly unlikely, and with rumors of the Midnight Suns also being in development, there might be more to this Halloween special than meets the eye at this moment. Starring Gael Garcia Bernal as the titular character, with Harriet Samson Harris as Verussa and Laura Donnelly as Elsa Bloodstone, Werewolf by Night is all set to stream on Disney Plus on October 7th, just in time for the spooky season. That's a wrap for this video. What do you think the future holds for Marvel's path down the horror genre? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you at the next one.